Hi guys, it's Dan here, and today we're going to be talking about that's upside down, the Assassin's Apprentice, which is the first book in the Farseer Trilogy, which is a work of epic fantasy by Robin Hobb. And in this book we follow the childhood and adolescence of our main protagonist, Fitz Chivalry Farseer, and he is a royal bastard of the ruling house of the Six Duchies, which is where the majority of this story takes place. Most of this book, like maybe the first sort of 2/3, follows his kind of training in loads of handy skills by like a bunch of different tutors that he kind of latches onto as sort of surrogate parental figures. And we're also introduced to the political and military situation of the Six Duchies as they're kind of being attacked by this like menacing group of bad guys called the Red Ship Raiders, who like are kind of scarier than their name sounds. So is this any good? I mean, yeah, I absolutely loved this book. This was fantastic, and if the I think there's about 15 or 16 other books in this series, but if the quality continues anything like this, I'm going to be seriously impressed, and I'm really looking forward to getting on with the rest of it. I loved Robin Hobb's writing style. It was really easy to read, but without being overly simple. She definitely doesn't mind the occasional literary turn of phrase or a nice metaphor or a bit of symbolism to reinforce a plot point. There's plenty of nice twists and reveals, but with like enough foreshadowing that none of it feels forced. I mean, once I got into it, I honestly couldn't put this book down. The world had like some really interesting original elements to it. It had like really some cool magic systems. One of them has this sort of telepathic Dr. X from the X-Men kind of vibe, and the other one was this more emotional empathy, talking to animals kind of thing. The Red Ship Raiders were really good bad guys as well. They had a really like ominous sense of like unpredictable menace. We only get to see like a little bit of the wider world in this book, but like the Mountain Kingdom at the end had like a really unique culture, and it was great to explore a bit of that. And I like the way that at the start of every chapter, sort of similar to what Brandon Sanderson does in the Mistborn series, there's these short sections that are only, tangentially sort of related to the plot, but like Robin Hobb uses them to give world building elements or little character backstory elements that you'd have to sort of put into expository paragraphs in the text if you wanted to have them actually in the narrative. So that kind of obviates the need for that. So I thought that was a really nice feature as well. And I think Robin Hobb also does like a really good job of developing the characters and the relationships. Like the book is written in the first person past tense from the point of view of Fitz. So obviously we get to know him the most out of all the characters, and he's got like a really interesting place in the world, being like a royal bastard. He kind of straddles like the entire social spectrum because he's got this kind of vague, ambiguous status within the hierarchy, and that means that he is able to develop relationships with all kinds of different people, and it feels natural. So I thought Hobb made like a really good choice with that, and I really enjoyed the cast of secondary characters that there are too. Like the ones that Hobb actually fleshes out are full of like depth and humanity. Like all of the characters that Hobb chooses to spend page time with and really flesh out are super relatable. Like in spite of their flaws, you may or may not agree with their outlook or their decisions, but you certainly understand where they're coming from, their reasoning behind them. I mean, there were like one or two things that could have maybe been slightly improved upon, but like I say, this was a really good book. So these are just like minor criticisms. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I thought the pacing wasn't exactly spot on. There's this whole kind of training montage section, which basically takes up sort of almost 2/3 of the book, I think. And I thought that could have been condensed a little bit. because it made the middle third just sort of drag slightly, and also like although there were these really unique world building elements and like the Mountain Kingdom culture, like I say, was really interesting. I thought the culture of the sort of Six Duchies itself, you know, the main kingdom that we're focusing on, that did feel a little bit like a sort of generic European medieval culture with some magic bolted on, if you know what I mean. But to be fair, like because we're only mainly focused on like one town within this within the Six Duchies for pretty much all this book, it'd be quite easy for Hobb to address that in later books by doing more world building of the different areas. So you know, I'm sure that will be addressed. And the only other thing I would say is that this book, it's the first one in the trilogy, and it's basically all just set up for the rest of the trilogy. You know, there wasn't an awful lot of resolution for some of the major plot threads, and I know that they've got to be running throughout all three books, but it's nice to see a bit. I would have liked to see more of a mini resolution at the end of this one. That is a matter of personal taste. But it's something I like in the first book of a trilogy. I thought that you know, the threat of the Red Ship Raiders, which are like the main bad guys, it wasn't really addressed at all at the end of this book, even in a minor way. And also, like, Fitz has this kind of love interest character running throughout it. But then 2/3 of the way into the book, she just, I mean, disappears off the face of the earth, and it's barely mentioned again for the rest of it. And I'm sure that she will come back in the future, but it would have been nice to have maybe just a scene somewhere, you know, of them face to face actually having some kind of either conflict or resolution to set up, you know, further development in that relationship. But yeah, like I say, these are minor criticisms. I'm nitpicking really. So yeah, Assassin's Apprentice, first book in the Farseer Trilogy. I'd heard really great things about this before I read it from, you know, friends that I've got, other people who, you know, do videos on YouTube. So I was expecting it to be good, but it was even better than I expected. So I absolutely recommend this to anyone who's into fantasy. It was a cracking read. Bye.